Education Labour Relations Council found at least 39 teachers countrywide guilty of sexual misconduct perpetrated against learners. The council says most of the teachers are from the KwaZulu-Natal province, followed by Gauteng. The department spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga says they need more than just vetting.
People get vetted. Once they are in the system, then they get involved in criminal activity. So vetting is not a guarantee whatsoever. We need to focus on changing the mindset, remind the adult that they have a duty to protect the young person that is in front of them, that they are supposed to educate, that they are supposed to nurture.
Argentina is tightening its immigration rules. Presidential spokesperson Manuel Adoni says that migrants will have to pay for healthcare if they do not have insurance. He also says universities will be allowed to charge foreign students. According to Adoni, they will speed up the process of deporting migrants who've committed crimes.
From now on, any convicted person who attempts to get in through the border will be rejected by the migration authorities. Those caught entering through unauthorized crossings will be immediately expelled. Those who lie in any information provided on their entry will also be expelled. Argentina will not be a fertile land for the arrival of criminals.
Dr. Leila Hussein, a Somali-born British psychotherapist and one of the world's most outspoken activists against female genital mutilation, a survivor herself, she has spent her life supporting others through organizations like Daughters of Eve and the Dahlia Project and the Girl Generation. FGM for so long has been described as a cultural practice. Featuring this week on Channel Africa Conversations podcast with Peter Ndoro, Hussein challenges the notion and says it must be recognized for what it truly is.
I actually don't recognize it as a cultural practice. That's what I'm saying. I recognize this for the violence that it is. So part of the change, it's for us in the media, storytellers, donors, education system, the health system needs to recognize this for the violence that it is.
For more on this, please watch this week's edition of the Channel Africa Conversations podcast on YouTube and the SABC Plus app. Recapping the top story this hour, South African political activist Peter Kriel says he does not agree with the views of Afrikaners that have moved to the US to be resettled. 49 Afrikaners have already arrived in the US after President Donald Trump signed an executive order saying they were victims of racial discrimination. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday, and thank you so much for being a part of this incredible family which loves the African perspective, which loves the African people, and loves to have the conversations that are for us, about us, and by us. It's 9:06 Central Africa time. Thank you to the morning team. That's Asanda Beta and Peter Ndoro, who kickstarted our morning on Africa Rise and Shine. But now it's time for On the Move with myself, Palesa and Benjamin Moshatama, with you until 12 p.m. Central Africa time. The next 3 hours will be filled with news, views, and entertainment from the African perspective. Taking a look at some of the conversations we'll be having this morning. Before that, join in, tap in. Let's keep these things moving together on www.channelafrica.co.za. Find us on our audio bouquets, DSTV channel 802 and OpenView HD channel 628, as well as a really great app called the SABC Plus app, and you can find Channel Africa there under the radio section. All across the continent, young people continue to face a big hurdle when it comes to accessing healthcare, particularly healthcare that is associated with HIV and AIDS, teenage pregnancy, family planning, and reproductive health, because there's a stigmas and judgmental attitudes from clinics and healthcare services that simply don't speak to the youth's realities. And we'll be exploring what youth youth-friendly healthcare really means and what it should look like, as well as why it matters. We'll be chatting in the first hour of the show with Rod Ndlovu, the Senior Evidence and Insights Manager at non-profit organization Girl Effect South Africa, finding out how we can close the gap of youth-friendly healthcare all across the continent. Going into the second hour of today's show, so studies have revealed, for someone like me who's constantly on social media, it's really important to have an algorithm that speaks to you. And of course, you're the one that really curates your own algorithm by the kind of content that you like, the kind of content that you view for extended periods of time, and the kind of content that you share. And that creates your own algorithm. So this new research has shown that people who constantly are exposed to negative online interactions or negative content online can experience increased feelings of anxiety, depression, as well as low self-esteem. So we're going to take a look at this because a lot of people are like, but what if this negativity is not directed to me? I mean, I just like seeing all the drama that other people have. Yeah, it doesn't actually have to be about you, but it can actually have a very negative impact on you as well. So how do we navigate the toxic landscape of social media while protecting your own mental health? We'll be speaking to Zimbabwe-based social media specialist and digital marketer Audrey Imbayago in the second hour of today's show. And then we wrap up today's conversation to speak about what could we do to begin to tend to the younger versions of ourselves, also known as your inner child. We've had a couple of conversations about healing the inner child, but what are some practical steps that you can take to take care of that inner child, to start healing it, and to take really simple steps and practical things you can do to heal your inner child? We're finding out those practical steps in the final hour, speaking to Zonke Shazihlongwane, CEO of Iksasa Ngelami, an NPO and a child and youth care practitioner. So there's a lot to talk about this morning.
Hey, let's take the journey together, but the journey is not the same without you, the listener. So we always love it when you're part of it. Remember, you can actually become part of the Channel Africa family on our multiple social media platforms. On Facebook, we simply titled Channel Africa, or you can check out our handles on all social media platforms, TikTok, Instagram, X, also YouTube as well. Use that handle at Channel Africa 1 and take this journey with us. And during this 3-hour journey, we want to also hear from you. So remember the WhatsApp number where you can text us and voice note us on. It's +27 63 406 9126. Let me say it again for you. Remember the country code of South Africa, +27. Start with that and then include the numbers 63 406 9126. Let's get going. It's 10 minutes past 9 o'clock Central African time. This is On the Move.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions qui comptent? As-tu une voix qui mérite d'être entendue? Eh bien, nous avons la plateforme parfaite pour toi. Téléphone-nous ou fais-nous un WhatsApp au +27 66 408 87 42 et nous te rappellerons. Sois dans la conversation.
Salut Channel Africa, ici Beno le diamant rouge et Binal Sport depuis le Cameroun, le pays des lions. Voilà.
Sois dans la conversation. Il ne s'agit pas seulement de parler, mais c'est ta chance d'exprimer ton point de vue, de partager tes opinions et de t'engager avec une communauté qui valorise ton avis. Suivez-nous sur les réseaux sociaux, visitez notre site www.channelafrica.co.za et préparez-vous à partager vos points de vue sur Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Get set and be ready to go. On the Move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
It's 12 minutes past 9. You're tuned in to On the Move, getting into the conversations of the day. All across the African continent, it seems like young people or the youth continue to face major hurdles when it comes to accessing healthcare. I know you're saying, that doesn't really sound right, because if people can access healthcare, why wouldn't young people be able to? Well, we're not speaking about, general healthcare where, a young person comes and presents with the flu. Young people are facing hurdles when it comes to accessing reproductive healthcare. So HIV and AIDS, family planning, pregnancy, and many other other particularly reproductive healthcare, because there's a lot of stigmas, judgmental attitudes from healthcare workers and at clinics, and the services that simply don't speak to the realities of young people. But what if healthcare was truly designed with young people in mind? And what if healthcare was inclusive to young people? We'll be exploring in this hour of the show what youth-friendly healthcare really means, why it matters, and how transforming our approach could be the key to ending the HIV epidemic for the next generation. We talk right now on the line to Rod Ndlovu, the Senior Evidence and Insights Manager at non-profit organization Girl Effect South Africa, about the Close the Gap Higher Education campaign, which aims to connect young people with essential health services, encourage HIV testing and treatment, as well as help close the country's significant treatment gap. Thank you so much, Rod, for your time. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much, Palesa.
You know, when we speak about the gap in healthcare for young people, it might sound bizarre to many. Like, why don't you just go to the healthcare facility and get the treatment that you ask for? But there are really big hurdles, like the judgments, but many other things that young people could be facing when especially trying to access reproductive healthcare.
Yes, there is quite a number of barriers that limit young people from really accessing healthcare. I mean, as we are aware that our NDOH facilities, most of them are not really youth-friendly. Young people face judgment, they face stigma. Young people are also face they face where there is not enough, I would say, enough material or enough for them to have if they then lack choice. So where young people end up taking a contraceptive that is really not their choice, and then they lack knowledge around that contraceptive, and then that then leads to defaulting, then leads to teenage pregnancy. We've also seen this with the initiation of PrEP, where young people are also facing stigmas around that, around initiation of PrEP. PrEP is medication that young people, anyone can take really, that prevents anyone from catching the HIV virus, which is taken on a day-to-day basis. So young people are facing barriers, quite significant barriers. Other barriers are influenced by mental health. Other barriers are influenced by the economic struggles of the country. As we know that we live in a nation where the unemployment rate is quite high, so it's significant. That poses as a barrier for young people, as young people sometimes do not have the means to get to the health facilities. Hence, the programs that we've been initiating with the Department of Health and Higher Education, trying to bring the services to spaces where we find young people through our new brand called Chibizindo by Girl Effect, which has seen a TV series called The Chippy on SABC1 every 6:30 prime time. It follows characters that embody that go through a journey really of reproductive health, journey of economic empowerment, a journey of mental health, and then similar to that, we've got a chatbot called Big Sis. The chatbot Big Sis really educates young people, also links young people to services, and that young people are aware of every service delivery partner, be it government or be it non-governmental partners who are delivering the services for young people, especially healthcare services around sexual reproductive health. Yeah.
Well, Rod, it really isn't just about the access to healthcare, right? Because I think, fortunately, especially in comparison to other parts of the continent, South Africa does have a little bit of a fortunate headway, whereas there is free access to healthcare, even though it's not always good access and not for everybody, of course. And young people can go to a local clinic and try and access these particular things. They should be there in those facilities. But it's not just facility access that we're talking about here. We're speaking about youth-friendly. Let's speak about the term youth-friendly. What does it mean for a healthcare facility and healthcare workers to be youth-friendly?
So in terms of healthcare workers being youth-friendly, really that healthcare workers are not judgment. They do not pass judgments towards young people. Young people come in, because often when young people come in, for an example, young person will walk into a facility. As they walk into a facility, they are seeking for a contraceptive. And then within that period, they get judged because now that is seen as sort of a thing to say that a young person is having sex. They're engaging in sexual activities, and then they then get judged. Where young people go to a clinic to take pregnancy tests, and then the healthcare facilities or the healthcare workers are really there's no privacy. Young people feel like there's no privacy. Their results or their business, I would say, would be screened in corridors. And for an example, they'll be like, you come, HIV test comes here. Like they get labeled those terms, they get in. So that really isn't friendly for young people, and then it then makes young people stay away from seeking the healthcare that they need. So by youth friendly, we are talking about facilities that really are for young people, cater for young people, are friendly to young people, won't pass judgment, and young people feel comfortable to even disclose some things that they might not disclose in healthcare facilities where they feel like they are being judged, or where they feel like they are really not welcome. So by youth friendly, we mean facilities that are welcoming to young people, that make young people want to go there and access these services, because there's awareness. Young people are aware that they need those services, but then in terms of the uptake of the service, it becomes a challenge for them because they then fear that. So hence it also ties into the mental health of the young person.
How do you actually train healthcare workers to be youth friendly in order to close the gap? Obviously, we know that we have a big youth population in South Africa, as is on the rest of the African continent. In fact, a bigger youth population in Africa than the rest of the world. And because of also our high HIV/AIDS statistics, it's important for young people to be able to have those judgment-free zones. But many a times, there are cultural norms that are put in place even in our healthcare facilities, where you try to go get contraceptives, or you try and go get an HIV test, or you try get a pregnancy test, and you're judged like you're speaking to your mother or your father in that healthcare facility, and then you sort of scolded like a child or the child of that person in that facility, which also draws young people away, as we spoke about earlier. So is there training that's put in place for healthcare workers to be more youth friendly and encourage young people to access and use those facilities?
Yeah, there's quite a number of trainings. There's a lot of organizations that are providing that healthcare training or capacity building, especially to the healthcare workers at government facilities. That is also adopted by the government, where these organizations are going in and helping with capacity building. One of the organizations that come to my mind as I'm speaking is Anova Health. Anova Health also train and capacitate and facilitate friendliness amongst healthcare workers across the nation. They're present across the nation, especially in the areas where there's high HIV incidence. That's number one. Number two, what we do as Gelifet is that we promote really peer-to-peer service delivery, where the service delivery point is by young people for young people, where young people are then trained to be healthcare workers, facilitators. We work with different organizations that then facilitate that training of young people to then do that peer-to-peer support or peer-to-peer service delivery, where they are then attached to different facilities, and within those facilities, then the young people can work with another young person. We are now in partnership with Lifeline, who also has a similar model where their service delivers or their care workers are mostly really generally young people, the youth, who are then delivering those services to the other youth. We've seen this model quite work, and it's very effective, as they also understand the plight that they face, and then that's a peer-to-peer model sort of works. Yeah.
All right, Rod, let's take a short break. Stay with us. We're going to continue chatting about this, but also find out a little bit more about the Close the Gap Higher Education campaign by Girl Effect South Africa in collaboration with various other government departments. We're speaking to Rod Ndlovu, chatting to us about youth-friendly healthcare. What does that look like for you?
Africa. It's time to plug into the heartbeat of the continent. Tune in to Channel Africa, your go-to radio station that broadcasts in 5 different languages.
L'Afrique du Sud célèbre la journée nationale du
Kabla hujaitwa kwa jina la Double K,
or more of our forests have been destroyed.
Tamo ndi
Partido Africano da Independência da Guiné.
See, Channel Africa represents every corner of this amazing land. From Lagos to Cape Town, Nairobi to Dakar, we've got you covered with the freshest news, music, and cultures. So, turn up the volume, feel the rhythm. And join the conversation. Channel Africa, the African perspective. 9 to 12 midday, Central African Time. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
22 minutes past 9 o'clock Central African Time. You joining us from the third floor of the SABC building here in Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you for joining us on DSTV Channel 802, OpenView 628 on the SABC Plus app, and also on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za. We're having such an important conversation. We're exploring youth-friendly healthcare. What does it actually mean, and why does it matter? And should we be transforming the current approaches that we have in our healthcare systems here on the African continent? Helping us to look at things from a South African context, we have Rod Ndlovu, the Senior Evidence and Insights Manager at non-profit organization Girl Effect South Africa. And we're speaking about the Close the Gap Higher Education campaign, which aims to connect young people with essential health services. Rod, I mean, you spoke about just the taboos when young people are trying to access, especially health services that have to do with sexual care, and that seems to be one of the big challenges. And the big challenge, another challenge, is that girls are more willing to go to health services than their younger male counterparts. I mean, even us as males who are adults, we hardly go to health services. So there's those kind of challenges. I want to look at that girl effect element that your organization follows or tries to actually enhance. Why is it that girls are the target?
Girls are the target because girls have been very much marginalized. Our organization really we put the girl child first because even after the pregnancy, it's the girl that then carries the burden of the pregnancy. It's really not the guy. We're not saying that the boys are not important. We are saying all young people are important, but our focus really is mainly on girls because the girls form part of the vulnerable population. If you look at the GBV stats in South Africa, it's quite high amongst young females where they are being where they are victims. Despite boys sometimes being the victims, but majority, in many cases, girls become the victims. Hence, our priority really is equipping the girl child with the essential means for them to get by through sexual health, also through just to be able to negotiate for safe sex, and also be able to understand power dynamics. So our aim as an organization is really to promote the girl child because we see the girl child as the most vulnerable person in terms of if we were to do a comparison between look at comparison between the boy and the girl.
And they are at a disadvantage, girls, because of that negotiating power and the fact that socially they are actually marginalized, as you mentioned, but also they seem to be, especially adolescent girls, they don't have that leverage of power and negotiating that power. How are you helping them to actually assert themselves a little bit more and to turn that narrative around? Because, as society progresses, we need to see young girls being more empowered to make their own sexual decisions.
So what we do this through different means where we our focus really is on digital because young people are being found on digital platforms now.
Sure, yeah.
We've got a chatbot called Big Six that gives young people knowledge, that equips young people with knowledge around safe sex negotiations, when a sexual sex scene is now becoming maybe where they're being victimized. We also educate young people in terms of to look out on those elements, on the red flags, I would say, if they do not want to have sex, they can always say and give them tactics on how they can negotiate that safe sex or not to engage in sexual activities if they feel they do not want. So we try and give the choice and the power back to the girls through our Big Sis chatbot, where girls can really ask any questions around their sexual health, around gender dynamics, around sex negotiation, where they'll be equipped either with tools, or if it escalates within, they are then referred to our concierge through Riza Babuyile, who's our partner, where they will speak to the woman in the loop, where they will speak to a counselor, and they can get further advice in terms of how they can maneuver around any situation, any sexual situation they might have found themselves in. So that is what we do as Gallifest.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about what you mentioned earlier as we wrap up, around the fact that the health system can be very judgmental to young people. I'm not so young, but I've been recently in a hospital, and I really felt judged for being ill. I felt like even when the nurses, not just the nurses, but the doctors, how they spoke to me, there was a lot of judgment. In fact, like I was to be blamed for the condition I was in at that particular moment. And it wasn't anything that has taboos attached to it, like HIV, AIDS, or any other sexual related illnesses. Do you think we should do more as well in terms of teaching health practitioners how to address young people in their various different circumstances?
Definitely, a lot should be done to help health practitioners in terms of educating them in terms of how they can handle themselves. But also, we need to also understand, be cognizant that the burden on the health facilities and also on the health practitioners sometimes becomes too much. There is a WHO guideline around fatigue in healthcare workers that then causes all of these things that you mentioned earlier on, that sometimes they seem to be annoyed, but that annoyance sometimes is caused by the fatigue. So a lot of healthcare facilities are really high burdened, with probably one nurse or two nurses having to see the entire community for the whole day without taking breaks. So that also, the alleviation of that workload from the healthcare workers would also help minimize those judgment, and which is what a lot of organizations and our organization is trying to promote by really capacitating the facilities, the health facilities, and capacitating the healthcare workers to also manage their stress load, because as well they are also human, also understanding that they might also be facing other mental health challenges that need to be addressed. So I think a lot needs to be done, not just on the HIV space, but our primary focus is HIV and sexual reproductive health space, but really a lot needs to be done around the healthcare system, especially capacitating the healthcare system in South Africa. Even though we are we are on the better side, sure, if you look at the broader continent.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. Where do we find out more about some of the work that Girl Effect South Africa does? Just quickly, we need to move on.
So the work we do well on all social media platforms as GV Zindo, or we also have got a web app called gv.coza. We are also on Big Sis. Big Sis will direct you to a lot of the work we do. A Big Sis chatbot is on if you Google Big Sis, you'd be linked to our WhatsApp chatbot. But we are on all social media as GV Zindo, GV Zindo SA _SA.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, that's how we wrap up that conversation, and a very interesting one from Rod Ndlovu, the Senior Evidence and Insights Manager at the non-profit organization Girl Effect South Africa. That conversation takes us to 9:31 Central African Time. Let's get our sports update.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, guys. Let's save off with tennis news this hour. Madrid Open winner and world number one Aryna Sabalenka has been sent packing in the quarterfinals by Chinese 8th seed Zheng Qiwen A6-4, 6-3. Sabalenka's stunning clay court from deserted her as she fell in straight sets to Olympic gold medalist Zheng. It was a seventh time lucky for the world number 8 as she at last got the better of her Belarusian opponent with a confident display under the lights in Rome. After surviving early pressure on her own serve, Zheng broke Sabalenka to take a 3-2 lead in the first set before serving out. Zheng then pounced in Sabalenka's first service game in the second frame to go up a break. Sabalenka showed determination to make gritty holes in the first and seventh games of the set, but she could not make inroads on Zheng's services as the 22-year-old powered into the semis. Zheng will meet Coco Gauff in the last four after the American earlier beat Mira Andreeva 6-4, 7-6 and 7-4 5-tie. The Nigeria Flying Eagles will look to continue their impressive record at the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations when they face South Africa's Amajita in a keenly anticipated semi-final clash today. Meanwhile, Amajita will be aiming to reach only their second final and spoil Nigeria's quest for a record-extending 10th showpiece appearance. The kickoff is scheduled for 4 p.m. Central African Time at the Suez Canal Stadium in Ismailia. And the president of the Nigeria Football Federation, NFF, Alhaji Ibrahim Musa Gusau, says the Nigeria's senior female football team, the Super Falcons, will play the indomitable Lionesses of Cameroon in an international friendly. The match will be played at the newly renovated MKO Abiola Sports Complex, Abeokuta, on the 31st of May and the 3rd of June. The NFF boss also stated that the sports complex would also host Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Niger, Togo, Benin, Ghana, and Nigeria in the West African Football Union WAFU Under-17 Championship in September 2025. On to athletics. Team South Africa's medal-winning relay athletes have touched down at the O.R. Tambo International Airport east of Johannesburg yesterday. The team topped the medals table at the World Athletics Relay Championships in Guangzhou in China last weekend. They won 2 golds and 1 bronze medal across 4 events and were voted best team at the World Relay. This is after 19-year-old Bayanda Walaza, Snesipo Dambile, Britt Linkwana, and Akani Simbine recorded the fastest time of the year in the men's 4x100-meter event, a record of 37.61 seconds to edge out the United States by just 0.05 seconds. Walaza says the gold medal is what they have always dreamt about.
For me, I would say this medal is actually a start of this season for me. You know, it is what we were expecting as a team, and it is what I was dreaming about. You know, each and every one of us dreamed of being winners. You know, so I believe that this medal is key medal that's gonna make my season much more stronger this year, because I don't see myself as a loser. You know, I see myself as a winner because we won there, you know. So every time where I go now, I know that I have a gold medal in world athletics. Means I'm one of the best in the world.
The women's 4x100-meter team, Shailene Kubuyi, Miranda Kutsie, Precious Molepo, and Zene van der Waal set a new national record and claimed bronze in the event. And female captain van der Waal says her priorities included qualifying for the World Athletics Championships in Tokyo later this year.
When I was asked at the pre-camp what are our goals for the World Relays, and I just told them the first main goal is for us to qualify, for the women to qualify and for the mix to qualify, and then the men as well. But for me, being the female captain, the ladies is one of my priorities on focusing on.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Ahoy, matey!
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa 1. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa 1. So, spread the word, tell a friend. that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
All right, let's keep things moving. Thank you so much for our sports news, Figile Lingwadi. Now let's get our latest business news with Tabiso Lehuku.
Business news on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Thanks, Palesa, and good morning. The International Monetary Fund has decided to cut Malawi's extended credit facility program. The fund was granted 2 years ago to support the country's efforts to economic stability ahead of the September elections. Chief economist at Dawn Consultancy Group, Chifi Mango, told Africa Rise and Shine that the grant was meant to shore up the macro economy.
Well, I think the IMF support of 175 million was negotiated last year to support the macroeconomic framework in Malawi with regard to management of the economy, stabilizing the external resources when it comes to revenue side, but also stabilizing the economy when it comes to the forex issues which the country has been facing.
Debt Busters, the debt index for the first quarter of this year, shows that more than South Africans are relying on personal loans to survive as the cost of living escalates. According to the index, of South Africans are struggling to repay their debt. 91% of debt counselling applicants have loans. Debt Busters Chief Operations Officer Bini Saga says the number is worrying.
The real challenge is that because incomes haven't grown, consumers are feeling the need to supplement them with additional sources of income. And the first port of call, it seems to be going for loans, particularly personal loans. As you say, it should never come to this stage, particularly for younger people. We really want to catch them early on and give them the right advice. But it really is for us at the highest level since 2017. And we haven't seen numbers like this in almost 10 years.
The Africa Digital Inclusion Alliance, a Pan-African-driven organization, is aiming to address the digital divide with an upcoming online event. The South Africa Digital Inclusion Leadership Forum 2025 will take place on the 24th of May. The event will allow participants to connect with the global leaders and gain insight on advancing digital equity for all. Krish Moodley, author, AI enthusiast, and speaker at the event, says the forum is designed to make Africa thrive by adopting local solutions that protect our culture and sovereignty for a digitally inclusive society.
The purpose of the forum is to bring together leaders in government, business, and students and researchers to drive digital inclusion. It aims for making popular digital inclusivity and digital equitability in South Africa.
Nigeria says it is discussing exploration of its deepwater oil acreage with the Petrobras. Years after the Brazilian oil giant exited the West African nation, Nigeria's Foreign Minister Yusuf Taga says that Petrobras is no longer active in Nigeria but would like to again do business there. Brazil is due to host the BRICS Summit and COP30 this year, after hosting the G20 meeting last year. Nigeria plans to promote investment at these summits as the African nation seeks to deepen ties with Brazil in areas such as energy, health, culture, and agriculture. Oil prices fell over $1 during trade on expectations of a potential US-Iran nuclear deal, while a surprise build in US crude oil inventories last week heightened investor concerns about oversupply. Brent crude futures fell $1.49 or 2.3% to $64.60 a barrel. US West Texas Intermediate crude futures slid $1.46 or 2.3% to 61.69. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 600. Botswana 13 pula 46, Kenya 128 shilling 305, and Zambia 26 kwacha 48. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5.64. Russia, 80 rubles 40. India, 85 rupees 8. China, 7 yuan 20. And in South Africa, $1 is trading at 18 rand 30. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 89 to the euro. Commodities markets, gold $3,153 and platinum at $980 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $64.49 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Download the SABC app and take Channel Africa with you everywhere you go.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et votre 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
No fairy tales, just the facts and the music you love on Channel Africa. And Portuguese, the languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story. A living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future.
This one is titled You. That's Willie Paul featuring Gucci coming through on this particular song. It's 9:46 Central Africa time. We're speaking about youth-friendly healthcare. And if you are a young person today, or even if you're an older person, if you can remember back to when you were young, do you think you've ever experienced youth-friendly healthcare on the African continent? I ask this because I think it's quite tricky. Personally, I don't think I've ever experienced youth-friendly healthcare. Yes, I've experienced healthcare in so many different ways and even good ways, but I don't think the healthcare was particularly youth-friendly. And I think back to like my high school days when some of, the stigmatized reproductive health services was even more stigmatized at that particular time. And, you'd speak to your friends and you'd realize that a lot of young people and young women in particular were afraid to go access reproductive health care at their local clinic, at their local healthcare, even at their family doctor, because they were so afraid to be judged by the healthcare workers in that facility. And we don't really understand how big of an impact that has on some of the terrible statistics that we've seen, the statistics of HIV and AIDS, the statistics of teenage pregnancy, and many even STIs, and, those who aren't getting family planning just because you're too afraid to be judged. You see, just this week we were speaking about tradition versus modernity. And there's a huge problem on the African continent where sometimes we cannot separate what is quote unquote African from what is needed and necessary. If you're a healthcare worker, you have in that particular facility, you have to be a healthcare worker first before you are quote unquote an African. Because I say this because some of the African principles that we like to live by is that, respect your elders, you can't speak about certain things with your elders, and you have to hide some of the things that you do from your elders. And so when you go to a healthcare facilities, the healthcare workers treat you like the family elder. And so when you go and ask for family planning, they scold you like in that African way. You're having intercourse. Why are you doing that? Do your parents know about this? To such an extent that if this healthcare facility is in your own community, that particular healthcare worker might actually end up going to your parents and telling them that you are now having sexual intercourse and then they should watch you, or you are promiscuous. And those are the things that make young people afraid to go and access what they really need to, which is this healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of our aunts worked in the public health system. So if you went to that particular hospital, you knew if your aunt caught you somewhere in between the corridors of that particular hospital, you'd be probably scolded or asked, well, what are you doing here? Yeah.
And can you be honest about that? Because in that facility, even if someone might not have ever seen you, but they recognize your surname, and let's say it's the same surname that your aunt has, and they'll probably ask you, hey, are you related to sister whoever, or brother whoever who's in this facility? And if they confirm, then all of a sudden you can't actually tell that particular nurse or doctor what you came there to do. So even if you're a guy, maybe they've been speaking about condom use and you came to come and ask questions and access some free condoms in the facility. Imagine now if that same nurse catches you with those condoms in your pocket, they're going to go tell your parents, they're going to go tell your auntie that you are being naughty.
Yeah, I wonder if that's happening now, but I think there are those kind of nuances that do actually take place because just recently I was in hospital, and when I went into the clinic, I don't know this lady, how she found out I just walked in. I was just in there for like 2 minutes, and already she had heard my surname and she knew my dad. And already she's like, what's wrong? Are you okay? And you know what? I got an advantage because she kind of speeded things up for me because she knew my father. But that stuff does really happen, to the negative and the positive.
Yeah, and it goes so deep. It actually is one of the biggest reasons that we are seeing some of the, statistics that we see. And so on the one side, it seems like government is preaching, hey, teach the children about healthcare so that we can bring down the numbers. But the same places that are supposed to give this access of healthcare to are not youth friendly and are judging and stigmatizing the young people for the healthcare they should get. thereby continuously raising the numbers that we're trying to bring down.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's your take on this one, how we treat young people in our, health facilities, especially the public health facilities? Because I think in the public sector, it's different to the private sector. I think there is a little bit of different treatment in the private sector, but in the public sector, it feels like it's like more family orientated. It's more kind of easygoing, and the strict rules that are applied in the private sector are not so much applied in the public sector. Do you think we treat young people the way that they feel comfortable to actually go to a local clinic, to actually go to a local hospital? Give us your thoughts on this conversation that we're having right now. Plus 763 406 9126.
Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa on the move. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized.
I Don't Know Why is the name of this one. Kudzai Sevenzo is the name of the artist here. I don't know why. I do love you, but I just don't know why. Yeah, that's a very tricky one. Haven't spoken about things of the heart in a while.
Yeah,
maybe we should go
that sounds
there.
toxic.
Right?
I don't know why I
very,
love it.
very toxic. All right, we're keeping things moving before we wrap up this hour of the show. It's very interesting, right? I speak a lot about social media. I'm always on social media. And the algorithm is something that essentially you kind of control, right? Because your algorithm shows up on your social media platforms as the things that you are particularly interested in. And when you start any social media platform, the algorithm is all over the place and you don't understand, why am I I here? What's all this stuff? I'm not interested in any of this. But as soon as you watch, let's say on TikTok, as soon as you watch a particular video for a long amount of time, and maybe you even watch it twice, maybe you like it, it says to your algorithm, hey, this is the kind of content I like, and they give you a little bit more of that. And depending on, if something that you don't like comes on, you scroll on quickly, and that tells your TikTok, that tells your algorithm that you don't like seeing that. So over time, the kind of things or the kind of content that you consume on your social media is somewhat of things that are of interest to you. There will be some odd things here and there, but most of them will be things that the algorithm thinks are of interest to you. So what happens when on your social media algorithm there are a lot of negative things that are on there? Maybe it's a gossip pages that you like to watch, celebrity gossip and people who are breaking up. Maybe it's podcasts of people who speak badly about others. Maybe it's like those random fights from those shows, those TV shows, those reality TV shows where people fight and go after each other. It might be very entertaining to you. But do you know that it could actually increase your feelings of anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem?
That's what we're going to be talking about a little bit later.
Yeah.
I think you have to kind of curate your online experience to kind of balance out things, I do that in a way whereby I really want to see the content that's going to build me up on social media. That's why I haven't been so good with TikTok, I have to say.
Yeah.
I've tried TikTok. I still have a TikTok account.
Yes.
But it's just not building that algorithm that I want, that is kind of a progressive algorithm. So I spend less time because it's just unattractive, the kind of content that's created on TikTok. It's not getting my algorithm. I don't know why. So I stay away from TikTok, and I'll prefer probably like Instagram, because kind of the content that's curated there is more aligned to kind of my moral value system, right? So I think it's very important for people to curate that online experience for themselves, because it's so easy in some platforms to just get the feed, and that feed is feeding you negative, toxic content. Yeah.
Another issue is most of us do consume, social media almost on like pilot mode, right?
Yeah, sure.
And we don't really look at the algorithm as something that's pretty important, and we don't really look into what our algorithm is giving us. We're just sitting there and just like, letting it happen at the time, and we just entertained and just scrolling endlessly. We're not really paying that much attention, but we don't actually get to understand the kind of effects that our algorithm has on us over time. So I'm really interested in this one, especially for someone who's on social media a lot. I don't really have a very negative algorithm, and I like that about my own personal algorithm. There's some just content that doesn't really consume me or doesn't really interest me, so it doesn't show up a lot on my feed. But if it does on yours, do you know how your algorithm is affecting your mental health? We'll chat about that in a couple of minutes. For now, let's go back to our news desk with Jwalane Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Palesa. Top stories this hour. Al-Qaeda affiliate Jenim claims responsibility for an attack targeting a military post in Burkina Faso, and political activist weighs in on Afrikaners moving to the US. Good morning. Al-Qaeda affiliate Jenim has claimed responsibility for an attack targeting a military post in Burkina Faso's northern Loram province, in which the group said 60 soldiers were killed. The US-based non-governmental organization, the Site Intelligence Group, which tracks online activity of Islamist militants, said Jenim had posted messages on Monday and yesterday in which it took credit for 4 assaults in Burkina Faso and Mali. The attacks highlight the difficulties the 3 Sahel nations of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, ruled by military leaders, are facing in containing the insurgents. Burkina authorities have not commented on the last attacks. South African political activist Peter Kriel says he does not agree with the views of Afrikaners that have moved to the US to be resettled. 49 Afrikaners have already arrived in the US after President Donald Trump signed an executive order saying they were victims of racial discrimination. More Afrikaners are expected to join the 49 who are already in America. About 70,000 South Africans have expressed interest in moving to the US. Kriel says they will not be able to protect the Afrikaans culture. He also says their claim that they are fleeing persecution is unfounded.
It's impossible for a people to be a refugee when there's 7% of the population but somehow manages to still own and control around 72% of national wealth. That is astounding to me. People that flee to another country for persecution reasons, they don't line up in airports, they flee persecution. You cannot protect Afrikaans culture if you're in exile. Afrikaans culture only exists in Africa. Other countries don't want your apartheid baggage.
South Africa's Basic Education Department says it is determined to use a multifaceted approach to clean the system of sexual predators. This after the Education Labour Relations Council found at least 39 teachers countrywide guilty of sexual misconduct perpetrated against learners. The council says most of the teachers are from the KwaZulu-Natal province, followed by Gauteng. The department spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga says they need more vetting than just vetting.
People get vetted. Once they're in the system, then they get involved in criminal activity. So vetting is not a guarantee whatsoever. We need to focus on changing the mindset, remind the adult that they have a duty to protect the young person that is in front of them, that is supposed to educate, that they are supposed to nurture.
Sean Diddy Combs' ex-girlfriend Cassandra Ventura has testified that the hip-hop mogul raped her in 2018 after they ended their more than a decade relationship. Known as Cassie, the singer also said Combs agreed to a $20 million settlement to end her November 2023 civil lawsuit against him. The disclosures come on the third day of Combs' trial yesterday when Ventura revealed that she had considered taking her own life 2 years ago. She said that Combs also threatened to publicly release explicit footage of the so-called freak-offs. This after he found out that she was seeing rapper Kid Cudi. Combs' lawyer will begin cross-examining Ventura today. And finally, Dr. Leila Hussein is a Somali-born British psychotherapist and one of the world's most outspoken activists against female genital mutilation. A survivor herself, she has spent her life supporting others through organizations like Daughters of Eve and the Dahlia Project and the Girl Generation Project. Not often spoken about enough, widely regarded as a taboo subject, Hussein shares on Channel Africa Conversations podcast with Peter Ndoro that the alarming statistics of how many girls are being maimed and killed as a result of FGM.
If we're saying every 12 minutes a girl is going to die, I mean, I think the stats from University of Birmingham urge everybody to really look at this. They looked at how many girls die from FGM, compared it to how many children are dying from malaria, and it's literally not, the numbers are not that much of a difference. That is the pandemic we're dealing with. So that's why the stories of survivors are absolutely critical. So supporting survivors is what's going to get us the results that we now need, because we haven't been creating a safe space for survivors. Actually, we've been shutting them down and we've been watering down their experiences for a very long time.
Recapping the top story, the Sawa Al-Qaeda affiliate Jinim has claimed responsibility for an attack targeting a military post in Burkina Faso's northern Lorem province, in which the group said 60 soldiers were killed. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulongwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective. Digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it.
It's 5 minutes past 10 o'clock Central African time. Thank you, Joalane, for that update. You are listening to Channel Africa. This is On the Move. This is where you get news, information, entertainment from that African perspective. It's a unique perspective, isn't it? Because for many, many years, we've been told who we are. In fact, there's an imposition on how we have to govern ourselves and who we have to be. I mean, it's still happening today. Look at the situation with South Africa and the US, people telling us who we are, what's happening here, without really investigating the truth on the ground. So this is where we straighten things up here on Channel Africa and give you thoughts of who we are from a personal perspective, but from a communal viewpoint, but also from a continental's eye view. You're listening to us on DSTV channel 802, OpenView 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za. Remember, the SABC Plus app is there, and that's where you can catch that podcast that we're talking about in that news bulletin. We've got a wonderful podcast there that comes up every Wednesday morning. It's called the Channel Africa Conversations, led by our colleague Peter Ndoro. And this one is an interesting one that they're talking about this time around. They'll be looking at FGM, that's female genital mutilation. They'll be speaking with a pioneer in the space of activism around this particular issue, a Somali-born British psychotherapist and social activist, Leila Hussein. So check out that podcast there, but also you can listen to our content right here on Channel Africa via the SABC Plus app. It's so easy to find. Well, we're going into the second hour. We've got so many cool things to talk about, and this is an important one because we at times just flimsily utilize social media with so much trust, with so much ease and nonchalance, like, it is what it is. And because it is kind of an informal platform, we sometimes don't see the subliminal negative messagings that kind of affect us and can actually strain our certain feelings. Like, we can feel feelings of anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, but there's also other feelings of comparison, of anxiousness, and also of feeling like you're not good enough in society, right? So we're going to be looking at how social media affects our mental health in this second hour, and we'll navigate that toxic landscape of social media. How do you actually surf things? How do you filter things that are actually bad for you on social media? And I'm a journalist, and some of the stuff that I really don't like on social media is misinformation. It's everywhere. It's almost in every post, but we kind of take it so easily without a sense of questioning it. So we'll be speaking to our guest to find out a little bit more about that.
Yeah, are you questioning your algorithm, and do you know how it might be impacting your mental health? Let's have those conversations together. Not only can you tune into our social media platforms, but we are live on many of our platforms. On Facebook, we are Channel Africa. We are live there on Facebook, so let's engage over there. You get to see us in our studio. Hello over there. But also find us on Instagram. We're also live over there, as well as on YouTube. That's at Channel Africa 1, the handle that you can find us on. On X, we're also at Channel Africa 1, so we can engage together. But let's also hear your voice and your thoughts on +27 63 406 9126. Our WhatsApp line is always welcome and open for you. Welcome to have you there. And of course, you can also call us directly. Let's keep things moving. This is On the Move. We're speaking about mental health and social media. Really important conversation coming up.
Ritmos e cultura com o embaixador da música africana e lusófona, Jacobi Wakantivani.
Mombali nanga kasongo mbona wewe songa libala mbona wewe mombali nanga
tem sentido tanto a sua falta e do ritmo de cultura onde você esteve, meu querido embaixador.
É 2025 e o embaixador da música africana e lusófona, Jacobi Wakantivani, traz todas as entrevistas com os músicos africanos e lusófonos para a melhor dança, entrevistas e entretenimento. Não perca! Todos os domingos, das 20 às 21 horas de Johannesburg, aqui no Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Keeping you on the know and on the move.
Hey, studies have shown that people who are constantly exposed to negative online interactions can experience increased feelings of anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem. Being publicly shamed or belittled online, especially repeatedly, can erode a person's sense of self-worth and belonging. And while some say this can be dismissed, or some may even dismiss this online cruelty as just words, or tell it like, you know what, it means nothing, I don't take it to heart. There is the emotional and the mental impact that is very, very real. It's not just celebrities or influencers who experience this. Ordinary people who simply enjoy posting everyday content can easily be subjected to unsolicited ridicule. I remember there was something that happened in South Africa where there was a very obese young lady who was full of joy and was posting herself and her family, her father mostly, and family members, but people kept going at her on TikTok until she actually committed suicide, and she died actually because of that situation. And afterwards, there were a lot of people on TikTok saying, oh, we're so sorry this happened to her. And why are people actually doing this, speaking negatively? And why are they body shaming? But at that time, it's too late. The person is no longer with us. We're going to be speaking about that today and figuring out how do we navigate the negative landscape of social media. Mongezi Mtati is the senior brand and marketing strategist at Roger Wilker on the line. Mongezi, welcome on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Benjamin. Good morning.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it happens in a way that you don't actually expect it. I mean, when I cite this young girl who was actually body shamed for her obesity, really, and people didn't understand how sensitive she was, you know, in terms of where that could actually take her and could actually lead to her actually committing suicide. It's worrying, right, when you do find yourself in that space where you are navigating social media and maybe you're posting things out of joy, but you never think that the response will be so negative.
Yeah, it is very concerning. And I think just to, go back a couple of years, in the early days of social media. If you remember, when you followed news sites at the time, you used to be able to comment on a news story. And around the 2010s, those channels stopped that comment because it didn't add value. So this brings us to social media today, where this anonymity that sometimes people have is what bolsters them to post these negative things without realizing that on the other end of their post are actually people with feelings, not just, anonymous beings talking who are unaffected. So a lot of it is, when I think about it, a bit of a reflection of society, that it looks as though when you look at social media, it looks as though behind closed doors, when we don't know who you are, society can sometimes be dark. And why is that? And I think that's the bigger question, which social media is a reflection of.
Yeah, I mean, how do you navigate that? Because, when you go to social media, mostly you want to be entertained. Some people, of course, want to be informed. I don't know if social media is the great place to get informed. I don't actually think it is the best place. But you actually want to get access to that environment of the world and what people are talking about, and you want to be in the mix. What should you do to make sure that it is in a healthy way? Because there's so much content on social media. I mean, if you think about TikTok, what people post on a daily, I'm always kind of like shocked. I'm like, this is a content overload experience. And for me, that's why I'm not on TikTok, because I already get social anxiety for that, because I'm like, people are already just just selling so much content, and they're making so much content that in itself for me creates anxiety. And it's like, how do I consume this thing? Because there's just so much of it.
So I think, this brings us sort of into this world of algorithms, because we hear about algorithms all the time on social media. And in a nutshell, it is, a system that learns from your consumption as a user. So if you are always following football content and you search for football content it will serve you content about football more and more, commentary, all these games and things like that. And if you're looking for positive content, you do the same. You search for positive content, you search for motivation, you search for this, you search for mental health content, mental health wellness, and all of that. So these algorithms, which are a gift and a curse, learn from your behavior and serve you content based on that behavior. To your point earlier, sometimes it could be misinformation, disinformation, because a Mongezi can post mental health, wellness content when I have no expertise in that space. So you put yourself in kind of that sort of space, and it's really a matter of sifting through that content. So I think we shouldn't look at social media firstly in isolation. We should look at social media as a big part of the internet and utilize, other parts of the internet to verify a lot of that information. But if, to your question, if you want to get positive content and you want to reduce negative content, firstly, you search for positive content, you watch the positive content, and you tell the algorithm that this isn't relevant for me. On TikTok, for instance, you're able to say, I don't like this, or this isn't relevant for me. And then it starts learning what you like, what you comment on. So that's how you do it on the one side of it. The other side of that is also, I feel like it starts with us. Yeah, it starts with us as people, as humanity, the things that we reward, because the negativity, unfortunately, the negativity is rewarded. It's rewarded with likes. It's rewarded with comments. It's rewarded with people liking content that is posted that is toxic. So if as a society we stop doing that, we stop rewarding toxicity, I think it might fade away. So that's also how these platforms work, right? Like at the back of us experiencing social media platforms like a Facebook, a TikTok, and Instagram are people sitting and checking what content really resonates with people. There are people sifting through that content. There are teams of people sifting through that content. And if we as society keep rewarding a certain kind of content, it will proliferate.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I think that's where the domination of that content actually becomes something that affects all of our algorithms, because at times it's the trending thing that also kind of gets onto your own algorithm because it's happening in your locality as well, and it's happening in the context of where you are. So you kind of get that content in itself. We'll go for a break right now, but I'm interested in that in terms of people I don't think have that initial self-investigation, right? To say, I'm actually going to be affected by this content. It's either going to be positive, it's either going to be negative. I'm just here because I want to also be part of the club. Especially with social media, people do it because of this collectivism that it gives you, the fact that we're in this together. I mean, I've been looking at some of these trends that have been happening, when you look at the USA and South Africa, the so-called refugees that are now in the United States. Collectively as South Africans, we've really come together on social media and are having a different conversation in terms of our own context and how we're seeing that exit of those Afrikaners to the USA. And we are actually doing it because it actually binds us together to a certain degree. And that's the thing about content. We're watching the same content at the same time, and most of it can be negative content, but it doesn't matter what the nature of the content is. We're doing it because we've got that mass communications culture where we're doing it because other people are doing it. And maybe we can unpack that a little bit and how that actually works with the health of our mental health and how we see ourselves. We'll look at that theme after our break.
Call us on +27 63 406 9126 and contribute to the conversation. Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you will be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Get set and be ready to go. On the move with Palesa and Benjamin Mushatama.
It's all about the drama. And one thing about drama is that it will definitely get the clicks going. And if you're one of those people that love yourself some good drama and are entertained by drama, your social media algorithm will probably show you that, right? From seeing old shows of dramatic, TV shows that people are fighting, screaming at each other, or maybe even celebrity gossip. What's happening next? Who divorced who came for who's taking who to court? That's also pretty dramatic. But also there are many other ways that we take in some drama or even negative content on our social media platforms. We're finding out a little bit more coming from a study that shows that constantly exposing yourself to negative online interactions can help you experience increased feelings of anxiety, depression, and low self-esteem. We're still having this particular conversation with senior brand and marketing strategist Mongezi Mtati chatting to us about this. Well, Mongezi, I feel like the most obvious thing to look at would be the negative social media interaction that's directly associated with you. So the online bullying, maybe you being a part of bullying somebody else. But there is another form that we don't actually pay attention to that could actually be even more harmful because we don't see it as negative content, and that's all that drama. Your social media algorithm showing you, people who are fighting, celebrity gossip, and we're like, oh, did you see what happened to whoever? Did you hear who took whoever to court? Did you see what happened on Keeping Up with the Kardashians or anything like that? The Mummy Club, and you named them, these reality TV shows where drama is at the center of it all. We think it's just entertaining, but it's actually bringing to us more harm than good.
Definitely. So I think the thing that we kind of have to be aware of on these platforms quite a lot is that you are paying with your time. You're paying with your attention. Social media platforms are here to sell advertising, firstly. So the more something is popular, the more we consume it, the more that particular piece of content becomes shared on our timelines on social media platforms. So to your point about, the drama, the things that we watch, the things that give us, I think in psychology is called a dopamine hit, this excitement, this high, this sugar, this rush that you get from sugar, for instance. If you constantly consume that, your mind and your mental space gets used to this idea of me chasing this high, me chasing this sugar rush. And as we all know, it's easier to watch TV than it is to read a book. So you must do the thing that feels like reading a book all the time on social media for you to be served content that feels like reading a book, content that is informative, content that doesn't necessarily go to drama all that much and content that really serves you as a person, because that is the kind of content that improves your mental health. But then again, we shouldn't. I think if we want to improve our mental health and mental wellness, we should potentially use social media less. I know that I talk about social media for brands all day, but actually for people, for you to be healthy and for you to be a good contributing member of society, sometimes you need to decompress. You need to disconnect from some of these platforms and be outside and not be on your phone. And I think the idea that you are anonymous, you are not known, that you're not using your real name, using your real picture, is what bolsters some of this negativity. And to be honest, some of it is done by bots, not actual real people.
And that's also, I mean, it's another layer, the bots themselves, and how they really impact you. But if you realize, and I'm sure it's hard for people to actually associate perhaps their raised anxiety, their diagnosis of depression, or maybe their raised self-esteem issues to the content that they live there, that they watch on social media. How can you be more intentional with your algorithm if you do, get a chance to actually associate some of these feelings with your content? How can you be more intentional in what you absorb on social media?
Great question. So the first thing you need to do is curate the people you follow. So I know it's easier to follow people who serve you the drama, who serve you the entertainment, who give you that sugar high, that rush. But if the people that you follow on any platform are people who serve you that kind of content, that's predominantly the content you'll be served. So that's the first place you start. Follow the kind of content that empowers, follow the kind of content that is positive, follow the kind of content that does all of those things, because that's what you'll be served. That's number one. The second thing to do is search on the platform itself, search for content search for positive content that empowers you, and watch that kind of content, hit like on that kind of content, comment on that kind of positive content, because that's what you'll be served. The platform learns from that. And it's likely also that the ads that you are served are for that. So if you are liking that kind of content, it's likely that when an advertiser advertises an event that is positive, that is along the same lines as content you consume, that it will be served to you. That's how you improve it. That's another thing. Another part of how you could improve this is, sadly, we don't realize the impact of search and social media. We see social media as in isolation, but actually social media as part of the internet is a very important thing. So if I'm constantly searching for cars on Google or wherever, if I'm constantly searching for cars, these platforms will learn to serve me content about cars, because it's likely that I will also like cars on X, on Facebook, on Instagram. If I'm constantly searching for things about beauty, and the beauty industry was also under fire quite a bit for also being toxic, because there's toxic. The thing about social media is there's both extremes are true. There's toxic negativity, and there's also toxic positivity, where you are so ultimately positive that it looks like you are unaffected, making you seem less human to your followers, and therefore the people who follow you feel as though they also need to constantly be positive, because if they aren't, they don't live up to their idol, or whatever the case is. So there are all these things, but to improve it, you have to improve what you consume. That's where it starts.
Well, we'll leave it there, Mongezi. I think that's a mouthful. It's so important because we consume these in autopilot most of the time. We just, are sort of taking ourselves away from our own world and going into this world where we feel like we're relaxing, but actually we might not actually be relaxing, but actually doing harm to our own mental health and not being aware of it. So it's important to be more self-aware on these platforms. We appreciate your time and your tips in this regard.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's the senior brand and marketing strategist of Roger Wilco, Mongezi Mtati, speaking to us about, I guess, how we can both, enjoy social media while taking care of our mental health and not impacting our mental health just for a good time on the socials. It's 10:30 Central Africa time. Let's go back to our news desk. Right now, it's our latest in sports with Figile Lingwadi.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you, guys. Let me start off with football news. Nigeria national football team legend Daniel Amokachi has been praising the performance of the South African youth team, the Amajitas, during the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt. Amajita face off with their nemesis, the Flying Eagles of Nigeria, in the semi-finals of the tournament at the Suez Canal Stadium in Ismailia today. The Flying Eagles, who are aiming for a record-extending 10th final appearance, will need to be at their best to be overcome a South African side unbeaten in the last 4 matches. Amokachi, who is a CAF technical study group at the game, speaks highly of Amajita.
I think South Africa has a philosophy. I think in that region that they've been doing well. The movement of the players, the fitness of the players, the quick passes. That's something that you love to watch when you watch the South African, and they have. Showcased it. From the first game where they played, it's a game that for me I thought they shouldn't lose, but they lost. But the bounce back.
In publicly expressing his admiration for the South African youth team, Amokachi says the camaraderie in the camp is the reason for team's impressive performance.
I stay in the same hotel, with the team, and I see how the players and the staff, interact with themselves. And I had a session too. The anti-doping and monitoring session with them, and you can see the oneness in them, and they want to play football, and it's good to see what the philosophy is and what how they keep it going.
The president of the Nigeria Football Federation, NFF, Alhaji Ibrahim Musa Gusau, says the Nigeria senior female football team, the Super Falcons, will play the indomitable Lionesses of Cameroon in an international friendly. The match will be played at the newly renovated MKO Abiola Sports Complex, Abekuta, on the 31st of May and the 3rd of June. The NFF boss also stated that the sports complex would host Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Niger, Togo, Benin, Ghana, and Nigeria in the West African Football Union WAFU Under-17 Championship in September 2025. Team South Africa's medal-winning relay athletes have touched down at the OR Tambo International Airport east of Johannesburg yesterday. The team topped the medals table at the World Athletics Relay Championship in Guangzhou in China last weekend. They won 2 golds and 1 bronze medal across 4 events and were voted best team at the World Relays. This is after 19-year-old Bayanda Walaza, Snesi Potambile, Bridlingwana, and Akani Simbine recorded the fastest time of the year in the men's 4x100-meter event, a record of 37.61 seconds to edge out the United States by just 0.05 seconds. Walaza says the gold medal is what they have always dreamt about.
For me, I'll say this medal is actually a start of this season for me, It is what we were expecting as a team, and it is what I was dreaming about, Each and every one of us dreamed of being winners, So I believe that this medal is key medal that's going to make my season much more stronger this year, because I don't see myself as a loser. I see myself as a winner because we won there, So every time where I go now, I know that I have a gold medal in World Athletics, means I'm one of the best in the world.
Let's end with tennis news. Madrid Open winner and world number 1 Aryna Sabalenka has been sent packing in the quarterfinals by Chinese 8th seed Zheng Qiwen 6-4, 6-3. Sabalenka's stunning clay court form deserted her as she fell in straight sets to Olympic gold medalist Zheng. It was 7th time lucky for the world number 8 as she at last got the better of a Belarusian opponent with a confident display under the lights in Rome. After surviving early pressure on her own serve, Zheng broke Sabalenka to take a 3-2 lead in the first set before serving out. Zheng service as the 22-year-old powered into the semis. Zheng will meet Coco Gauff in the last four after the American earlier beat Mira Andreeva 6-4, 7-6 and 7-5. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za and call us on +27 11 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lungwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
Just the other day, I went to pick up my daughter from school, and as per usual, her friends they usually come to my car just to say hellos and goodbyes. So this particular day, they made this comment about my jacket, saying that it's giving baddie vibes.
You say my jacket is giving what?
It's giving baddie vibes. It got me thinking, where did the baddies come from? Because nothing is new under the sun, as it is said. I was like, oh yes, remember the Kenyan parliamentarian? Her name is Millie Odhiambo.
When you are urging me to be a good example to the girls, the younger ones who are doing their first term, Mr. Speaker, if they are good girls, they'll never get corner office. Be as bad as Millie Odhiambo, you will be the mother of this house. So do not be cheated like the African culture, where you are told have decorum, be nice. I'm telling you, you will go nowhere. Be a bad girl like me.
And I thought to myself, that is the original baddie.
Saturday and Sunday mornings belong to the Morning Switch. 3 to 6 a.m. Central African Time.
Hey, it's time for us to move on now. It's 36 minutes past 10 o'clock Central African Time. Let's find out what's happening in business.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Benjamin, and good morning. The International Monetary Fund has decided to cut Malawi's extended credit facility program. The fund was granted 2 years ago to support the country's efforts to economic stability ahead of the September elections. Chief economist at Don Consultancy Group, Chief Imango, told Africa Rise and Shine the grant was meant to shore up the macroeconomy.
Well, I think the IMF support of 175 million was negotiated last year to support the macroeconomic framework in Malawi with regard to management of the economy, stabilizing the external resources when it comes to revenue side, but also stabilizing the economy when it comes to the forex issues which the country has been facing.
Debtbusters Debt Index for the first quarter of this year shows that more South Africans are relying on personal loans to survive as the cost of living escalates. According to the index, a third of South Africans are struggling to repay their debt. 91% of debt counselling applicants of loans. Debtbusters Chief Operations Officer Bini Saga says that the number is worrying.
The real challenge is that because incomes haven't grown, consumers are feeling the need to supplement them with additional sources of income. And the first port of call, it seems to be going for loans, particularly personal loans. As you say, it should never come to this stage, particularly for younger people. We really want to catch them early on and give them the right advice. But it really is for us at highest level since 2017. And we haven't seen numbers like this in almost 10 years.
The Africa Digital Inclusion Alliance, a Pan-African-driven organization, is aiming to address the digital divide with an upcoming online event. The South Africa Digital Inclusion Leadership Forum 2025 will take place on the 24th of May. The event will allow participants to connect with the global leaders and gain insights on advancing digital equity for all. Krish Moodley, author, AI enthusiast and speaker at the event, says the forum is designed to make Africa thrive by adopting local solutions that protect culture and sovereignty for a digitally inclusive society.
The purpose of the forum is to bring together leaders in government, business, and students and researchers to drive digital inclusion. It aims for making popular digital inclusivity and digital equitability in South Africa.
Chinese cobalt smelters have ample supplies of the battery-making material despite the export ban imposed by the world's top producer, the Democratic Republic of Congo, in late February. General Manager at Shanghai Metals Market, Shelley Wang, says downstream users in China, the top consumer of the metal, have intermediate product stocks that will last between 2 weeks and 6 months. Wang says large-scale users in China are with 6 months of stock, though small-scale companies with half a month's stocks will have to buy them from the spot market at higher prices. European shares fell, weighed down by the steep losses in energy stocks following a drop in crude prices, while investors awaited key U.S. economic data and remarks from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell. The continent-wide Stoxx 600 index was down 0.5%, with the energy sector leading losses after a 2% drop. Most local bosses opened in the red. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 Rs 600, Botswana 13 Pula 46, Kenya 128 shilling 305, and Zambia 26 kwacha 48. The BRICS countries in Brazil, $1 is trading at 5 Ril 64. Russia, 80 rubles 40. India, 85 rupees 8. China, 7 yuan 20. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 18 rand 30. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 89 to the euro. Gold is $3,153. Platinum at $980 per ounce. Brent crude oil, $64.49 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Tune in and turn up the volume. This is Channel Africa. The Midnight Snack, 12 to 3 a.m.
Interracial relationships. And now you are based in the States and you are married to a beautiful white woman, white lady.
I learned that, for us in our culture, we literally can speak our mind. I remember when we had started dating and whatnot, and, she picked up like a little bit of weight. And me, I was like, oh, wow, you must be happy in this relationship because look at you. You look great. You're even picking up some weight. And she got really, really offended. And it took I think it was about a couple of hours before I could realize that, because I could tell that she was off after that. And it took me a while to figure out what it was. Until later when I was talking to her, I'm like, you're really, really off today. And then she expressed that, yeah, because you're telling me that I'm picking on some weight. And I'm like, in my culture, when you are gaining some weight, it means you're happy. Yes. So that's what I was trying to imply.
The Midnight Snack, every Monday, 12 to 3 a.m. with Chanduko Ligege. Celebrate unity, progress, and pride with Channel Africa this Africa Month.
Nowhere be like Africa, nowhere be like home.
Listen in on SABC Plus, DSTV Audio Bouquet 802, and Satellite Channel PAS 10. No fairy tales, just the facts and the music you love on Channel Africa. Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa on the move. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story. A living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa.
I really love her voice. This is Nomfundo Mo. This one is titled Lilizela. That's how you Lilizela. The word Lilizela actually means you lilate in the Zulu language as well as the Xhosa languages. So a lot of the Nguni languages here in South Africa. And I absolutely love that song. It's 10:47 Central Africa time. What does your algorithm look like? And do you think you will be a little bit more cautious, or rather a little bit more intentional about the kind of content that you consume? Because it's not just about the things that directly affect you. Like, you know, if you put up a post and people say bad things about you, of course, it's easy to see the direct impact or effect that can have on you and your self-esteem or your mental health. But it's also the things that you are consuming where other people are the victims of online abuse. If you consume that and see that as entertainment or drama, you could actually be a part of that drama by effect of your own mental health. And even beauty. Sometimes we just say okay, I just like to see all the beauty that other people are experiencing. And sometimes we see so much positivity happening in other people's life and lifestyles that we end up feeling less than about our own. So yes, those lifestyle content creators, they're always traveling, they're buying new furniture, their houses look so good, they're buying new cars, they're doing their makeup, they always look good, they're going to all these events. And you can look at that and say, these people's lives are so perfect, and some of them might be younger than you, some of them might be your age, and you could feel like you're just not hitting the milestones because seemingly on social media it seems like everybody is doing amazing. That can also have a huge impact on your own self-esteem, thereby creating some anxiety for you and comparing your life to the lives of others. So it's not always obvious that the content that you consume could have a negative effect on you. But that's why you need to be more intentional. You actually need to look at your algorithm. So go through your different social media platforms. I think I'm going to do that this weekend as well. Look at the content that I'm consuming and think about how it makes me feel, how it really makes me feel. So just scrolling through and looking at each thing that pops up on my algorithm and thinking, how does this make me feel? And if not a lot of it makes you feel good, then perhaps it starts trying to maybe get some time off of social media sometimes, take a few hours away where you're like, yeah, these are non-social media hours, but also just, thinking about more intentional ways to create positivity on your social media algorithm. Great advice that we got there from Mongezi, who chatted to us in this hour of the show about how consuming negative content on social media could actually be impacting our mental health. Let's hear from you. Join our live streams. We want to hear where you're tuned in from and your thoughts on the conversations of the day. It's 10 to 11 Central Africa time. This is one of the favorites. This is Ginger Me by Rima.
Keeping you on the know and on the move.
Another banger. Girl, you know your love with it.
For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver any...
Man, that one takes us to 52 minutes past 10 o'clock Central African time. You are listening to On The Move right here on Channel Africa. Well, it's time for us to investigate what is in the past that makes us who we are today. It's time for our Vintage If Africa. This is when I do a little bit of research and go back and figure out what makes us as Africans. Today on our feature, we're going to be looking at names. We've been looking at names this week. We'll be looking at names of countries earlier on. How did they come about? What are the previous names and what are we now? Right now, we're going to be looking at how Africans go about naming their children. This is not a simple task. It's because Africans have to navigate colonial names, historical, religious oppression, cultural stereotypes when making the decision to name their children. I know when it comes to my names, one name was very kind of aligned to my family religion, Benjamin, and actually not only that, but my grandfather's name was Benjamin, and it's something that I love. Some people make fun of my name. It's kind of a name that people make fun of in South Africa, Benjamin. They'll call you all sorts of things, but that's one name that I actually treasure. So that's very significant when it comes to our names, religion. For a very, very long time, unfortunately, the impact of colonialism and modern influences meant that we had to adopt English names. And many Africans, you'd wonder, if you're not from the African continent, why are you guys named Jack? Why are you guys named John? Why are you guys Sarah? There's a lot of Sarahs, there's a lot of Marys, but that's because many of our names are because there was a decline in the use of traditional names during colonial and apartheid eras. In recent years, we've seen a resurgence of interest in reclaiming traditional names as a way of reconnecting with our cultural heritage and our identity. But in many cultures, we are always feeling like a name has kind of a prophetic nature to it. The Yoruba proverb says, a good name is more precious than silver and gold. That's why Palesa is called
Wow.
Palesa. She's a flower. I'm sure, like my mother, when the mother saw, it's like, oh, she's so beautiful. Oh, she's so
Absolutely.
beautiful. She looks like a beautiful flower. So one of the things about our names is that they are really important in terms of family and ancestry. In many of our cultures, I've noticed in my family, mother's lineage, the bond of names of those who came before are very important. So some of my aunts have names of their aunts or their grandmothers. Some of them are like, no, man, I don't want to be named after someone else because I wanted my own distinct identity.
Yeah.
But like
and there's
myself, I'm
something-
Benjamin, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud of it. But that's something that my mother's family does, calling people according to their ancestries.
Yeah. And that's also something very significant in many African cultures because there's also a belief that if you're named after somebody, you're going to take on some of their personality traits.
Yeah.
So now, I mean, imagine now having to end up being like someone simply because you were named after them.
But also, it's part of honoring a lineage and preserving history. So, for instance, that's how our verbal dialogue happens in terms of who came before us. So, someone can say, so, Dad, why is your name Benjamin? So, I can say, oh, this was your grandfather's name.
Yeah.
Who was my grandfather? This was your grandmother, father. This is who they were. And my name was Benjamin because his name was Benjamin. So it's like preserving that family history and that family bond. And another one is reflecting circumstances. So there's people who didn't want their kids and they named them according to that. So we've got a few people in our country here in South Africa like Bomatlakala.
Actually, there's something significant.
Someone else says that it's actually flipping it upside down.
Yes.
Yeah. But Matlakala basically means you
Rubbish.
are rubbish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The word matlakala means rubbish
Yeah.
in the Setswana and Sesotho
Yeah.
languages. And there are a lot of people who are named matlakala, right?
Yeah.
And for many of us when we were young, it's like, oh my goodness, why would someone name you that? Do they hate you?
Yeah.
But actually, I learned later that the naming your child matlakala is breaking a curse. So I don't know if the parents lost a child before you, they name you matlakala to break the curse of losing children so that you can live.
All right, that's interesting. I know in some circumstances, some people didn't want that kid, and that kid felt like, they weren't in a circumstance to have that child, so forcibly they are rejecting that child to a large degree. So it can have a dual situation. In some, it's like a positive outcome, like there's a lot of khomotsos in South Africa, which means comfort. If you were born in a maybe discomfortable environment and the circumstances were of hardship and loss, people can call you khomotso as a comfort, that you are our comfort.
Yes.
And so those kind of names have that kind of prophetic situational significance. Others have ways of like warding off spirits.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like Matlakala and many others, I'm sure.
Matlakala is one of those.
Yeah.
You are warding off the spirit of negativity by the use of that particular name. I when I was naming my son, I kind of didn't know what to consider here because there were just so many elements. And I was like, do I do it because I want to name them because of someone who was named before me, or do I do it because I just want something new and fresh? Yeah, but I think I use that prophetic element as a system for me in terms of using that cultural system as well. And then there's gender and identity names, like Bomusa.
Yes.
That's unisex name.
Yeah. There are a lot of unisex names as well.
Yeah.
So gender also plays a huge role in how we name our children. There are gendered names that are very strict, like Benjamin would probably be just a male name.
But that's not even an African name.
It's not even an African name, yes. But
like my other name is very unisex, Simologo.
Simologo is a very
which
unisex
is like
name.
Male and female.
Yes.
Yeah.
My name's Palesa is a very female name. But my other name, Lerato, is quite unisex because you can find both males and females with the
Growing
name
up, I
Lerato.
found guys who are called Lerato very odd because I thought love was a very feminine energy,
Thing,
you know.
yeah,
So
yeah.
over time, you kind of get used to these names. You go, oh, Lerato. There's more Leratos who are female, but there are males who are called Lerato.
Yeah.
Then over time, you're like, oh, Lerato can also be a man
Unisex.
name.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our vintage Africa today.
I love that. Well, names are extremely important to us and on the African continent. So maybe let us know what your name is and what it means, because wherever you go on the continent, as soon as you tell someone your name, they're going to ask you, what does that mean? That's something you don't find anywhere else except here on the African continent. Well, we're wrapping up this hour. It's 11 a.m., the top of the hour, Central Africa time, of course. Jolane Tulongwepe is back with our latest news update.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Palesa. Top stories. The Sabah Al-Qaeda affiliate Jenim claims responsibility for an attack targeting a military post in Burkina Faso, and 67 former Israeli hostages write an open letter to the Prime Minister. Good morning. Al-Qaeda affiliate Jenim has claimed responsibility for an attack targeting a military post in Burkina Faso's northern Loram province, in which the group says 60 soldiers were killed. The US-based non-governmental organization, the Site Intelligence, which tracks online activity of Islamist militants, said Jenim had posted messages on Monday and yesterday in which it took credit for 4 assaults in Burkina Faso and Mali. The attacks highlight the difficulties the 3 Sahel nations of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, ruled by military leaders, are facing in containing the insurgency. Burkina authorities have not commented on the latest attacks. South African political activist Peter Kriel says he does not agree with the views of Afrikaners that have moved to the US to be resettled. 49 Afrikaners have already arrived in the US after President Donald Trump signed an executive order saying they were victims of racial discrimination. More Afrikaners are expected to join the 49 who are already in America. About 70,000 South Africans have expressed interest in moving to the US. Kriel says they will not be able to protect the Afrikaans culture. He also says they claim that they are fleeing persecution is unfounded.
It's impossible for a people to be a refugee when there's 7% of the population but somehow manages to still own and control around 72% of national wealth. That is astounding to me. People that flee to another country for persecution reasons, they don't line up in airports, they flee persecution. And you cannot protect Afrikaans culture if you're in exile. Afrikaans culture only exists in Africa. Other countries don't want your apartheid baggage.
South Africa's Basic Education Department says it is determined to use a multifaceted approach to clean the system of sexual predators. This after the Education Labour Relations Council found at least 39 teachers countrywide guilty of sexual misconduct perpetrated against learners. The council says most of the teachers are from the KwaZulu-Natal province, followed by Gauteng. The department spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga says they need more than just vetting.
People get vetted. Once they're in the system, then they get involved in criminal activity. So vetting is not a guarantee whatsoever. We need to focus on changing the mindset, remind the adult that they have a duty to protect the young person that is in front of them, that is supposed to educate, that they are supposed to nurture.
67 former Israeli hostages have written an open letter to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu urging him not to abandon efforts to reach a new ceasefire agreement with Hamas in Gaza. The signatories were released under previous ceasefire deals. The BBC's Waya Davies has the story.
Referring to a new American-sponsored ceasefire proposal that could see several remaining hostages released and an unspecified period of calm, the former hostages urged Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump not to let this historic momentum stop. But Israel continues to ramp up its military operations in Gaza. Intense airstrikes this week have killed dozens, and Israel has now issued sweeping evacuation orders for civilians in Gaza City, much of which has already been destroyed by war. As the humanitarian situation in Gaza continues to worsen, there's also more pressure now on Israel to, at the very least, allow more supplies in and ease some of the suffering.
Dr. Leila Hussein, a Somali-born British psychotherapist and one of the world's most outspoken activists against female genital mutilation, a survivor herself, she has spent her life supporting others through organizations like Daughters of Eve and the Dahlia Project and the Girl Generation. FGM for so long has been described as a cultural practice. Featuring this week on Channel Africa Conversations podcast with Peter Ndoro, Hussein challenges this notion and says it must be recognized for what it truly is.
I actually don't recognize it as a cultural practice. That's what I'm saying. I recognize this for the violence that it is. So part of the change, it's for us in the media, storytellers, donors, education system, the health system needs to recognize this for the violence that it is.
For more on this, please watch this week's edition of the Channel Africa Conversations podcast on YouTube and the SABC Plus app. Recapping the top story this hour, Al-Qaeda-affiliated JNIM has claimed responsibility for an attack targeting a military post in Burkina Faso's northern Lorem province, in which the group said 60 soldiers were killed. For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo-Webe.
SABC News. The African Perspective. Engaging Pan-African audience, ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it.
Right, we're in the third hour of On the Move. We're moving quite swiftly, and this is good. Time flies when you're having fun, and we certainly are enjoying the conversations that we are exploring today. That, of course, at the center of it all lies that African perspective. You are in the third hour of On the Move. Benjamin Moshatama is here. I am Palesa Tau, and in this hour of the show, we continue with the conversations of the day. Speaking about your inner child, I'm sure you've heard this particular phrase thrown around quite loosely in many ways as mental health becomes more and more appealing to many of us, also on those social media streets once again, but also it's become more of an open dialogue. So it might not be the first time you hear the phrase your inner child or healing your inner child, but a lot of the times when these catchy mental health phrases make the rounds, we think we understand what it is, and we hear people speaking about it, but we hardly get any practical examples on how we can use this in our own life setting. So that's exactly what we're doing today. Of course, we are not just one being. Part of who we are is the past, the present, and the future. And the past has a huge impact on who we are today and who we become tomorrow. So it's that child, you as a child, and your experiences, your triggers, your traumas, and even some of your positive experiences when you were younger have a huge impact on how you deal with the present and how you move on to the future. And that's why it's important to look at that little one, that little you, and think about some of the things you can do to heal them in order to reflect on your present, but also to move on into your future. So we're not just generally speaking about healing the inner child, but today we're getting practical tips on how to reconnect, on how to heal, and how to nurture our inner child. Zonke Shazi Hlongwane, CEO of Iksasa Ngelami, an NPO, as well as child and youth care practitioner, will be chatting to us on this conversation and giving us those everyday practical tips that we can use to start that inner child healing.
Yeah, man. And sometimes we think that, no, it's when you were that rape victim when you were young, that's the person who needs that inner healing from the child who was actually abandoned. That's the person who needs to heal the inner child. We always use these extreme events to say this is the person who needs to heal the inner child. But we all have an inner child to a large extent. And of course, I'm not minimizing the seriousness of those two examples, because these things happen, and there are serious issues where people get broken down from a very young age. There's child abuse that happens, there's child slavery, which are very serious things that happen when we were young, and we have to grow out of it. But do you go back to that child who's hurt and who's feels like they're abandoned? You haven't completely healed from that part of your life, and you probably never will, right? Because some of these things are lifetime wounds that we have to carry with us, with a sense of acknowledgement and a sense of power in terms of how we navigate that internal dialogue that takes place in our lives. But there's also some of us who just felt abandoned by one parent. There's some of us who felt like, there was a favorite between you and your fellow siblings, and like you were the one left out of things, and that's still something that you carry into adulthood. How do you go back and heal that inner child? So it can be a very intense environment to more lighter things that we have to go back to. We'll find out how do we navigate that space. What have your challenges been in terms of actually dealing with that inner child pain? Give us your thoughts on our WhatsApp number. Not a very easy one to talk about, but we are always transparent here on our show. We want to talk about that. +276 346 9126. You can talk to us about that or anything we've touched on today on the show. Maybe you've also been named something very unique in your country. Maybe they've given you a unique name and it resembles something unique in your country. Let us know about that as well. We were speaking about how we name each other, how we are named as children. I want to get your thoughts on our WhatsApp number. Remember, the WhatsApp number is +2763 406 9126.
Got something to say? Are you passionate about issues that matter? Do you have a voice that deserves to be heard? Well, we've got the perfect platform for you. Call in or drop us a WhatsApp on +2763 406 9126, and we will call you back so you could have your say and be part of the conversation.
30 years of age. I just turned 30 on the 15th of November. So that's who I am,
It's not just talk, it's your chance to air your views, share your opinion, engage with a community that values your perspective. Follow us on our social media. Visit our website at www.channelafrica.co.za and get ready to share your views on Channel Africa, the African perspective. #on the move and connect with us.
We unpack mental wellness quite a lot here on the show, and I think it's best, in fact, because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. But one of the things that we focus on the most, just generally as a people, is that when we think about mental health, we think about our mental health awareness only in our current state, right? Just as myself, Palesa, 36-year-old, I want to be mentally well, so I take steps to take care of me as the individual I am today. But we know how time works. Time works in three tenses: the past, the present, and the future. And we as humans also live within those three tenses continuously. Our past affects our present, affects our future. So why not look into your past, the younger versions of yourself, and see if there are things and remnants that lie there that might negatively or even positively affect your present and your future, but also to go back and look at some of the hurts that your former self, your younger self has gone through, and how to heal them in order to start healing your healing journey today and tomorrow. We're talking about that inner child, and usually we see some of the patterns and the triggers and emotional struggles that we have today without realizing that they are very associated to the younger versions of ourselves, and we may still be holding on to the pain, the confusion, and the unmet unmet needs of our younger selves. Well, the conversation of healing the inner child seems to be quite trendy, but do we actually know the steps that we need to do to take on that healing journey of that inner child? Well, that's what we're doing today. We're getting practical tips on how to reconnect, on how to heal and nurture our inner child. Joining us on the line is Zonke Shazihlongwane, a child and youth care practitioner, as well as the CEO of the NPO Ikusasa Ngelami. Thank you so much, Zonke, for your time. Good morning.
Good morning, Palesa. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you with us this morning. Well, I don't want us to focus too much on the definition of that inner child, even though we have to go there and start the conversation there, because today we're doing the actual work. Today we're gaining an understanding on the steps that we need to take every day, every month, every now and then to start that inner child healing. But let's go there. For those who might not have heard this phrase before, who is the inner child?
The inner child is your younger self that is now grown up. Remember, in human development, we are born and we take our experiences to our adulthood. So whatever perception we developed at a younger age, then we take that into our adulthood. So the inner child will always be there, helping you to make decisions or influencing you to make decisions without even knowing. So it's your inner self, but that child will always be existing and helping you. I think I like the fact, Palesa, that you even alluded to the fact that we should not look at bad or negative traits of that inner child. There are quite enough examples of positive traits of that inner child, even though that inner child may have been wounded.
I see. So, the experiences of any human being are barely only one-dimensional. So there probably isn't any human being that's only had positive experiences. There's a good mix-up of positive, of negative experiences, of traumas and triggers that we all go through. Of course, some more than others, and some with more significant traumas than many others. But nobody can actually be 100% perfect to say, I've lived only a positive, perfect life. Does that mean that all of us need to do some sort of inner child healing?
Do you know that having worked with a lot of parents, I did have a parent who's had only a positive life to a point she became a specialist, she graduated, got married a virgin and everything. But she came to our practice to say she's got a daughter now and she understands nothing with her journey and everything that she's going through. So even if you've had something that in inverted commas we call perfect, there certainly will be challenges because the world is not straightforward. It's not black and white. It's not just what you've been through, but others will have different experiences that you need to relate to. So if you've had a perfect life, again, you have a challenge because you are not an island. You're not living alone.
That's very important to contextualize it in that way. Let's continue with that in terms of that inner child. How do you identify that internal child that has either the needs or the accomplishments that need to be harnessed as an adult? Because I think we do ignore that inner child voice. How do you identify it?
Thank you so much for that question, Benjamin. I think the first step is acknowledgement and awareness, which is what we do a lot with parents in our case, and also just with individuals, helping them develop and become better individuals. The first thing is to notice and pay attention to your emotional reactions on a daily basis. For instance, if you fear being abandoned by friends and you're clingy, or you are ignoring red flags a lot and you feel that there's something wrong, but you don't trust yourself, you engage a lot in people pleasing as well. Mm-hmm. And I saw with myself, because I'm also an author of the book Get Your Enough, so I saw with myself in acknowledging that I had a lot of emotional numbness where I could not connect with my children, and I'm raising boy children. So I really had to confront that, acknowledge it, and be aware of it, and see how to deal with it. And also, a lot of neglect may show up in your adulthood, where you sort of feel like a child who needs emotional connection is too much and overbearing. Sometimes you can be judgmental as well as just shout at small incidents. So it's about recognizing your behavior patterns and see that and acknowledge or see why am I triggered by such behaviors.
You use the word that everyone uses, it triggered. And I think some people don't understand what that word means because we always talk about it and misdiagnose it. Let's talk a little bit about those child triggers. How do you know that it is a trigger and it comes from a certain historical point?
I think if these patterns are repetitive, a trigger is basically what causes you to react in a certain way. If we pay attention enough to our daily experiences, how we respond, and just focus on self, which is another journey of self-awareness and self-development, then we'll be able to see. You see, I was able to pinpoint exactly what my triggers were. A child who was needy really triggered me. I felt it was overbearing. A child who was crying, I really felt I could not handle crying. That is because that's how I was brought up. And also, any child that is emotional needy, for me, it would actually make me feel anxious. So one would be able to check such things, and also maybe wanting to meet other people's needs in a way of people pleasing, as well as being afraid of being rejected. All of that, it might seem like you're friendly, but we just might want to zoom into our behaviors and have a look at all these repetitive patterns of our behaviors.
All right, Zonke, we need to take a break. This is quite helpful to really understand, the common signs and behaviors that you have unresolved childhood traumas, the importance of inner child healing. But now comes the time where we need to actually understand the things that we need to do, or maybe moments that we can take that are also moments of inner child healing. After this break, we're going to get some of those practical steps to try and heal your inner child. Stay with us. It's 21 minutes past 11 Central Africa time.
Darubini ya Afrika na I am Henry Shakif.
Jumuiya ya maendeleo ya kusini mwa Afrika SADC imeanza kuondoa vikosi vyake vya kulinda amani kutoka maeneo ya mashariki mwa Jamhuri ya Kidemokrasia ya Kongo DRC kupitia nchi ya Rwanda. Hii imekaje?
Kinachojionyesha sasa tayari jumuiya ya kusini mwa Afrika SADC imeanza kuelemewa kwanza na gharama kubwa za kuongoza operation za kijeshi kule mashariki mwa Kongo.
Hii inaleta tafsiri gani haswa katika nchi za Afrika ambazo ziko ndani ya machafuko hivi sasa? Hii inaleta tafsiri gani haswa kwa mataifa ya Afrika?
Cha kwanza kwenye diplomasia, tafsiri ya kwanza ni hitaji nchi kutatua matatizo yao wao wenyewe. Mfano kinachoendelea Sudani Kusini, kinachoendelea Kongo, Rwanda, Uganda.
Darubini ya Afrika 11 kamili hadi 12 kamili majira ya Afrika ya Kati.
Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa on the move.
22 minutes past 11 o'clock Central African time. This is an important one. Have you heard the phrase, the inner child? And I can just hear the guys just running away. Nana, this is for the ladies. This conversation has nothing to do with us gents. Hey, you two guys, you have that inner child in you. There is that internal dialogue of your child self that's always happening. Today, we're going to get some practical tips on how to actually address that particular inner child, an important part of who you are. We're speaking to Zonke Shazi Hlongwane, CEO of Ikusasa Ngelami, a non-profit organization, and Zonke is also a child and youth care practitioner. It's great having you back because you get very practical with us, Zonke. So it's pretty cool that we can get practical on this one because, as Africans, we don't like getting too therapy. We don't like getting too, we feel like it's a little bit weird, but let's do it. Let's do it. One of us in the team was speaking about how to confront this, and it was actually beautiful to hear one of our team members saying that they actually had to sit down and write a letter to their child self. And I thought, Wow, that is fantastic. Bali and I have started just coloring stuff. I think that's also kind of dealing with that child self. I've started reading poetry once again. There was a time I used to love poetry as a young man, and I stopped because adulting, you don't read poetry, right? You do stuff that's more serious. But we miss out on that inner child and harvesting them and looking after them. Where do we start? I think I've given you a few examples, our listener a few examples, but I'm sure you have more examples.
Yes, I've got a personal journey that I took when I was, the book, my book that I've authored, Gallery Enough, is based on my story. It's a survival guide for township girls like me. So I had a lot of crying to do when I visited my grade 1 journey. I actually saw myself going to grade 1, feeling afraid, feeling unsafe, not sure how to form friends, not sure whether to connect with an adult in my class who was my teacher, because remember, my childhood life is full of fear and anger from both my parents. They were alcoholic and they used to fight. So I had to look at that inner child and first assure her that she's safe now. She's safe to unpack her feelings. No one will say she's overbearing, because those were the words from my mother. And having said that, I'm going to now just put a pause, because I want to also help our listeners understand that you must also understand the limitations of your caregiver, your mother or your caregiver, that maybe would have wounded you, without excusing their behavior. So I had to do a lot of understanding what my mom's limitations were. Remember, she was in an abusive relationship, and she also just turned into alcohol. So she could not connect. She started self-medicating. So she was not realistic. She did not have emotions to connect with me. So what I did was I visualized that child, and I can assure you, at first it's scary. It is cold. At some point, I actually felt cold inside me. I even mentioned this in my book. And when I visited and visualized that inner child, she was scrawny, she was scared. And I had to say to her, you are safe, you are okay, you are lovable. You can do anything in that space. So I actually spoke to her and assured her, because she usually shows up whenever I need to make decisions, whenever I need to do things, and I become a perfectionist because she visits a lot. So I had to assure her. And also I needed
Let's talk a little bit about that. Wait, let's stop her. You're moving fast here. That inner child dialogue, right? You were speaking that she shows up. Does she show up in the form of fears? Does she show up in the form of affirmation? How does she show up?
In my case, she shows up in form of fear. So whenever I need to make the next move, I'll start questioning myself. She showed up in form of perfectionism. I actually had to go through therapy, and my therapist would tell me it is still that inner child, because it changed forms. Once I understood it was perfectionism, then it would just be procrastination. Once it was procrastination, then it would be, okay, maybe I'm moving too fast. Maybe maybe I would just feel uncomfortable in moving into my qualification, even working in a space that I qualify in. So she would keep changing forms, and whenever I dealt with one term, she'd change another form. So I had to work on her and understand when she shows up that this is not you, it's your inner child, and she will hold you back because she has unfortunately spent more time with you than this person that is developing, who is now going to be an entrepreneur, running an NPO, becoming an author. So it gave me such a hard time, but flip side of that coin, gave me such a beautiful time, because I'm able to connect with others and help them be able to now pinpoint what is it that is holding them back.
Let's move on to the other steps that you took. Thank you for elaborating on that and being vulnerable on that, because I think it's important for people to see that manifestation of the inner child, that it comes in the form of feelings, and some of them are positive feelings or negative feelings. And then how do you then deal with that moving forward? What other practical elements could you offer us as we wrap up?
All right. I would suggest trauma-informed therapy, which is what I attended. And also, you will definitely need to set boundaries. I found myself saying yes to many things and not meeting some of the deadlines. and then being in a cycle of saying, oh, you see, you're not good enough. Oh, hence the book, Girl, You're Enough. See, you're not good enough. You should not have taken that. I told you, don't do these things as a boss man and man. So set boundaries, say no when you have to say no, and start the journey of parenting yourself. This was a beautiful journey for me.
Yeah.
I started parenting myself where I dressed myself in pink, Benjamin. To this point, my friends are always saying, oh, you're so girly, you love pink. But the issue is, I never owned any pink item when I was young because I had hand-me-down clothes. So I am now reparenting myself, dressing myself in that pretty pink clothing that I always missed out on, that made me feel like, oh, maybe it's because I'm not good enough, or maybe it's because this is just me. I mean, I get hand-me-downs. So I started dressing myself in pink. I started embracing the fact that I love pink flowers. I am a girl that's lovable. Take that journey. Be able to be vulnerable. And I've helped a lot of parents do that. There's a parent who does not like gardening because her trauma is around gardening, where she was young and she was sent into the garden to harvest, to plant, to plow. And there was a lot of trauma there and abusive words. So she needs to now heal around that area. There are many areas. We all carry different wounds, but it is up to each and every individual to recognize and go back to the child and affirm the child and give the child positive affirmations, which is what I'll follow with. I give myself positive affirmations every day. You are loved, Zonke. You're not an inconvenience. You are not annoying. And then turn it around and until you feel it, until you actually are able to walk through it. And many psychologists cite the fact that it has to be at least 21 days times 3. I listen a lot to Caroline Leaf, Dr. Caroline Leaf.
Okay.
She cites the fact that at least 321 days, and I've done a whole lot of work with her work in my life, trying to heal that inner child, because this journey is long. It's winded.
We have to wrap it up, unfortunately. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but I know you have a parenting yourself before parenting seminar. It's happening on the 24th of May 2025 at the 21 Field Street, Durban, Zuyashia, house floor on the 6th. Just tell us, where can people find more information about this?
All right. Let me just give them our office number that they can call and inquire. Our number is 063-819-6905. Let me repeat it, 063-819-6905. Alternatively, find me on social media, Zonke Shazi from Wane. Then also to inform our listeners that we are moving into the corporate space to help every adult that is hurting from inner child, because sometimes...
All right, we have to wrap it up. We have to wrap it up. I'm really late. I'm so sorry to cut you off there.
Problem.
All right, and just to remind our listeners that number add a +27 if you want to partner with our guest on other things on this particular theme. Well, let's quickly move on, as I've been pushing and pressing. Let's find out what's happening in our business. It's our sports news.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Breeze passed world number 7 Mira Andreeva to confirm her berth in the semi-finals of the Italian Open on Wednesday. In the quarterfinals clash, Gauff overwhelmed Russia's Andreeva in straight sets by 6-4, 7-6, 7-5 tie. 21-year-old, who stormed into the last 8 after dominating Emma Raducanu, nullified the Russian serve with her strong backline game. With the scoreboard reading 5-4 in the first set, Gauff had the opportunity to break Andreeva's serve, but she fluffed it after her forehand went straight into the net. However, she bounced back and secured 2 consecutive points to seal the first set. Gauff wrapped up the fixture by securing 2 points on the trot and stormed into the semi-finals. On to football news, Nigeria national football team legend Daniel Amokachi has been praising the performance of the South African youth team Amajita during the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt. Amajita face off with their nemesis, the Flying Eagles, in the semi-finals of the tournament at the Suez Canal Stadium in Ismailia today. The Flying Eagles, who are aiming for a record-extending 10th final appearance, will need to be at their best to overcome a South African side unbeaten in their last 4 matches. Amukachi, who is a CAF technical study group at the Games, speaks highly of Amachita.
I think South Africa has a philosophy. I think in that region that been doing well. The movement of the players, the fitness of the players, the quick passes. That's something that you love to watch when you watch the South African. They have. Showcased it, from the first game where they played, it's a game that for me, I thought they shouldn't lose, but they lost. But the bounce back.
In publicly expressing his admiration for the South African youth, Amukachi says the camaraderie in the camp is the reason for the team's impressive performance.
I stay in the same hotel, with the team, and I see how, the players and the staff, interact with themselves. And I had a session too, the anti-doping and monitoring session, with them, and you can see, the oneness in them, and they want to play football, and it's good to see what the philosophy is and what how they keep it going.
I will end with athletics. Team South Africa's medal-winning relay athletes have touched down at the OR Tambo International Airport east of Johannesburg yesterday. The team topped the medals table at the World Athletics Relay Championships in Guangzhou, China last weekend. They won 2 golds and 1 bronze medal across 4 events and were voted best team at the World Relays. This is after 19-year-old Bayanda Walaza, Snesipo Dambile, Bridlin Kwana, and Akani Simbine recorded the fastest time of the year in the men's 4x100-meter event, a record of 37.61 seconds to edge out the United States by just 0.05 seconds. Walaza says the gold medal is what they have always dreamt about.
For me, I'll say this medal is actually a start of this season for me, It is what we were expecting as a team, and it is what I was dreaming about, Each and every one of us dreamed of being winners, So I believe that this medal is key medal that's going to make my season much more stronger this year, because I don't see myself as a loser. I see myself as a winner because we won there, So every time where I go now, I know that I have a gold medal in world athletics, means I'm one of the best in the world.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fide Dengwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Benjamin Mushatama and Palesa on the move.
Thank you so much, File Lengwati. As we keep things moving, it's time for our latest business news with Thabiso Lehoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Palesa, and good morning. The Director for Economic Development at South Africa's Department of International Relations and Cooperation, Masutsa Mnguni, has emphasized that the country's presidency in the G20 will be driven by the voices of its people. Mnguni, who also serves as the G20 Summit Overall Project Coordinator, spoke to Channel Africa on the sidelines of the launch of the G20 Presidency Community Engagements and Town Hall Outreach Program held at the University of South Africa.
We are happy to be on this platform so we may share with you and the listeners in terms of what informs our participation as the presidents of the G20 in this important meeting.
Head of the Durban Tourism in South Africa's KwaZulu-Natal province, Neelam Mtungwa, says that this year's Africa Travel Indaba has successfully positioned the city on a path for future tourism growth. The Indaba, which is taking place at the Inkosi Albert Luthuli International Convention Centre, will end today. Mtungwa says that the Indaba also provides a unique platform for tourism attractions and connections with international buyers. She says that the aim is to secure international partnerships while boosting the local economy.
Over and above the business of the day, throughout the engagements they have in the trade show, we then take them to other attractions that we have in Durban to make sure that they have the first-hand experience of those areas rather than just them seeing it on the brochures or taking them virtually. We take them to those experiences, and we've had successful hostings through pre- and post-tours, and tonight we're having more.
The International Monetary Fund has decided to cut Malawi's extended credit facility program. The fund was granted 2 years ago to support the country's efforts to economic stability ahead of the September elections. Chief economist at Don Consultancy Group, Chifi Mango, told Africa Rise and Shine the grant was meant to shore up the macroeconomy.
Well, I think the IMF support of 175 million was negotiated last year to support the macroeconomic framework in Malawi with regard to management of the economy, stabilizing the external resources when it comes to revenue side, but also stabilizing the economy when it comes to the forex issues which the country has been facing.
Chinese cobalt smelters have ample supplies of the battery-making material despite the export ban imposed by the world's top producer, the Democratic Republic of Congo, in late February. General Manager at Shanghai Metals Market, Shelley Wang, says downstream users in China, the top consumer of the metal, have intermediate products stocks that will last between 2 weeks and 6 months. Wang says large-scale users in China are with 6 months of stocks. Those small-scale companies with half a month's stocks will have to buy from the spot market at higher prices. Commerzbank's chief executive and hundreds of employees voiced support for the German lender's standalone strategy as its shareholders met, stepping up efforts to fend off advances of Italy's UniCredit. About 200 Commerzbank employees gathered outside the venue of the annual shareholder meeting, carrying placards saying strong and standalone and no to UniCredit. UniCredit, with a stake of nearly 10%, is Commerzbank's second largest shareholder after the German government. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 600, Botswana 13.46, Kenya 128 shillings 305, and Zambia 26 kwacha 48. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 real 64, Russia 80 rubles 40, India 85 rupees 8, China 7 yuan 20, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 18 rand 30. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 89 to the euro. Gold at $3,153. Platinum at $980 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $64.49 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabiso Lohoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. It's Channel Africa's birthday month. Happy birthday! Celebrate Africa's voice with us. Catch us on SABC Plus, DSTV Audio Bouquet 802, and Satellite Channel PAS10. We are on OpenView's Audio Bouquet, Channel 628. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, One voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift. Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge. Every milestone and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, Partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa, partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent, African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices: English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks.
Swan got us dancing back in the 90s to this day in 2025. That is Angelique Kidjo's Agolo.
Do you still remember the music video? Like what happens when they go Agolo, Agolo? They do this. They raise their hands up like Agolo, Agolo, Agolo.
It's like an Egyptian dance.
Agolo, Agolo, Agolo.
Well, if you're missing out on that, you shouldn't be, because you should be on our live stream. So if you want to see us, what's happening in studio, remember you can check out our live streams on our different social media platforms on Facebook as well as on YouTube. Really go check us out. Then you missed that dance that Palesa was just... it was a beautiful act. She looked like an Egyptian queen for a moment.
Love that.
Well, that's an interesting conversation that we just wrapped up on earlier on, speaking about the inner child. The inner child is an interesting one. I was just telling Palesa off air. It feels at times that like the inner child is more prevalent, is more present in your adulthood than your adult self. So you always have to navigate this inner voice that's from your inner child, because if you try to avoid it, then you're really asking for trouble, isn't it? Yeah.
That's true. And just generally, if we think about it, we've lived with our inner child more than we've lived with our present self, right? Because they started with our life from the very beginning. And all the interactions we had with them, they've stayed inside us as we've been growing older.
Sure.
So we actually know them more than we know ourselves, but we completely completely ignore them, thinking that we need to stay in the present.
And it's not them, it's you, because it's big part of
them is you and you are them, and you guys just need to have a conversation.
Yeah, you just have to sit down. It's an interesting one. What's your take? Do you think we as Africans really like those kind of conversations? It feels like very like a Western luxury. I always say things sometimes feel like Western because we never really get the opportunity to work things out for ourselves. We think especially mental health issues are very Western and white people's issues, where we don't actually think we are part of that equation. We are Africans. We are part of that equation. We have to make sure that we are well when it comes to in our heads, in our minds, in our hearts, and in our spirits and souls. And it's such an important part of who we are.
Absolutely. Well, let's take a little bit of a break. We're going to be getting out in about 6 minutes and making way for Lulu Gabu and the Africa Update.
And Channel Africa makes sure of it. For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living, breathing, ever-evolving masterpiece. And for over 5 decades now, one voice has told it like no other. Channel Africa. More than just a broadcaster, Channel Africa is the pulse of the continent. African-led, African-run, and deeply rooted in its heritage. It's the only international station that speaks to Africa in its own voices. English, Kiswahili, Chinyanja, French, and Portuguese. The languages that unite 1 billion people. We have been there through every shift, every milestone, and every triumph. Not just reporting history, but shaping the conversations that define Africa's future. For brands, media planning, and advertisers, Channel Africa is more than just a platform. It's an opportunity. With 25 compelling shows covering current affairs, sports, business, music, and lifestyle, we deliver an engaging Pan-African audience ready to connect, invest, and act. Multi-award winning, internationally recognized, digitally accessible across the globe. When Africa speaks, the world listens, and Channel Africa makes sure of it.
West with one titled Alane. We're about to say goodbye as the On The Move team, but not without finding out what's coming up next on the Africa Update. Lulu Gabu is here to let us know what's coming up. Good morning, Lulu.
Good morning and happy
Thursday.
Yay. One more sleep in this Friday.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so coming up today, Russia's President Vladimir Putin will not travel to Istanbul in Turkey today for direct talks with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. We're all watching this very closely, how it unfolds, because it's a back and forth of ceasefire talks and no ceasefire talks. And yes, it's a very interesting one, but hopefully there will be developments after the president of South Africa meets with Donald Trump, and we'll see how far that goes.
Yeah.
And then also today, the 15th of May, marks the International Day for Families. So
okay,
yeah, it's all about the families. It's during the week, but yeah,
I'd like that. I'd actually be really interested to find out that today, on the International Day of Families, what do family structures look like today? Because what we have sort of deemed to be a family is not exactly what all families look like, especially with modern culture. Families are looking really different. So how different are families in today's day and age? And
the blended families, the polygamous families, there's a lot.
Yeah, there's the same-sex families, etc. So it's beautiful to see that families aren't what they always used to be, and I'd be interested to see the evolution of the family.
It's something we'll unpack on that front and just find out how society now sees families, as you say, because it's very interesting. And single families, these are, it's literally almost not every household, but
many households,
a big majority,
true.
Many households are run by women and also males.
Yes.
So Very interesting one.
All right, there's that and a lot more on the Africa Update. Stay with us right here on Channel Africa. Always is a pleasure to spend some time with you, and we'll do it again tomorrow. Have a great day, Africa.
For business, for culture, for Africa. Partner with Channel Africa, because Africa's voice is the future. Africa is a story, a living